Thank you, Stacy. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Grisolfi. Sorry, my voice is going a little bit. I'm going to have some help on today's session. I'm joined by John DePasquale. He's our expert here with vehicle consolidations. He also leads up our leasing acquisition branch. So we have him here. We're also joined by Janine Cormier, Chris Winchell, Gary Schlossberg, and some others as well that are here to help you. They'll be answering some questions in the chat. So today we're going to be as Stacy mentioned, we're going to be talking about making your job easier, how to transition agency owned or commercially leased vehicles to GSA Fleet leasing. And hopefully we give you some resources that you can take back to your leadership if this is something that interests you. So just to start off, since 1954, federal agencies have benefited from GSA's leasing offering, and also just being able to obtain comprehensive fleet services from GSA. Today, we proudly serve a wide range of agencies, including yours, for the most part, on a cost reimbursable basis. And our goal really is to satisfy your transportation needs by providing you with the best fleet vehicles and services at the lowest possible cost. So in terms of what we offer, our efficient offerings, um, we have three main offerings: vehicle purchasing. We are the mandatory source for federal agencies seeking to purchase non-tactical vehicles. We offer a single efficient marketplace for suppliers looking to sell to federal agencies. This results in significant discounts and savings. We're also in compliance with the federal acquisition regulation and other mandates and laws. We consolidate demand to drive prices lower. And on our leasing side, we purchase from ourselves, essentially from our contracts. We have dedicated contracting officers and expert engineers that have a deep understanding of the market. They know how to design vehicles, build them, and then our contracting officers make the award. We also offer a short-term rental program that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. It avoids the cost of purchase, ownership, and disposal. It helps for surge or seasonal requirements, and we provide both equipment and vehicles for up to 120 days. But for today, we will be talking about leasing, which is non-mandatory, but we do have global operations and we provide full service at rates that are 30% lower than commercial options and 20% lower than agency-owned fleets. This is actually based on the most recent federal fleet report from 2024. So today we'll discuss what is a consolidation, the benefits of transitioning your fleet, services included in our program, some success stories, and how to transition your fleet. And I will say, if anyone's getting very annoyed by my voice, put it in the chat. I won't be offended. You could even make it anonymous, and I'll switch over to John because John knows this stuff better than me, but I'm just being selfish. I like to present. So to start, what is a vehicle consolidation? It's an interagency transfer of ownership to GSA. Agencies retain use and custody of the vehicles, but you get to access GSA's full suite of vehicle management services through an all-inclusive rate. Your lease payments which begin to fund your replacement vehicle. And what's our commitment to you? We will help you to optimize your fleet in support of your mission. We fund and manage your replacement moving forward. If you do have a vehicle that's eligible to be replaced and you consolidate it with us in FY26, we can ensure that we're ordering you a new replacement vehicle almost immediately. So I just want to mention that one up front. Okay. So why now? So, of course, we have a new administration over the last, I guess over a year at this point. But this is one of the new administration's priorities. Government efficiency and enabling agencies to streamline is a big priority. This also helps to support mission delivery. So moving to a shared service model under one entity aligns with those efficiency goals. It also provides you with one fleet management system. GSAfleet.gov can be that system for you. It can handle all of your data. We have automated mileage reporting through telematics. It could lead to greater transparency. And it really allows you to focus more on your core mission by reducing redundant functions. For example, if you're managing your own fleet card program, we can take that all on for you. It also affords you flexibility in fleet composition and size so that you can upsize or downsize. So you can let your fleet service representative or GSA point of contact know if you need to reduce your numbers. You won't be penalized. Of course, we need to work with you to make sure that we're doing it so that it makes sense, but we will work with you on that one. So it really allows you to upsize and downsize quickly and affordably. So next, we're going to talk about challenges and opportunities. Here are some common fleet challenges that I just wanted to cover. And you will see that the numbers on this slide relate to agency owned vehicles. But I will tell you that these operational challenges are also affecting the commercial market and the US auto industry as a whole. So, vehicle acquisition costs have surged dramatically since the pandemic. Average transaction prices for new vehicles, for example, are rising by roughly 30% to over 40% by 2026. Vehicle maintenance and repair costs surged significantly during the pandemic, with total repair costs increasing by between 43 and 47% from 2019. And vehicles on the road are getting older. I remember I used to hear, oh, the average age of a vehicle on the road is 10, 11 years. But in 2025, it reached a record high at 12.8. And so these are challenges that are experienced by every fleet. And here at GSA, our one singular mission, our goal is to help you so that these challenges are minimized. So you'll see rising operating costs. So just looking at agency owned vehicles based on the 2024 Federal Fleet Report, there's a 31% rise between 2020 and 2024, a 41% increase in M&R costs, and vehicles that are 9 years and older on average. So how can we help you overcome these challenges? So a lot of agencies, especially over the last year, have had a lot of budget constraints. I'm sure I do not have to tell you that. But in GSA Fleet, when you need a new vehicle, we do not require any type of capital outlay. You have a predictable that's known. Every year we do update our rates. Those come out in June for the new fiscal year. We do allow for year-round ordering, but we do strive to place our vehicles in the first 2 quarters, 2 quarters of the fiscal year, just to ensure that it's in line with when our OEMs when their schedule is, and also to keep our prices low and to also ensure we don't miss any vehicle closeouts. Our light duty fleet is replaced every 5 to 7 years. You see that MCC term, that's our maintenance control center. They monitor and approve each repair, ensuring work is required and the price is reasonable. And that reduces vehicle downtime. I mentioned we have gsafleet.gov, built-in reporting compliance, rich data, and then automated mileage via telematics. So what can you expect from leasing? Um, this slide really is meant to be a takeaway slide, just so you have that handy. But we handle acquisition and disposal. You select your replacement vehicle, and then we really take care of the rest. Once the new vehicle is delivered, you simply drive up to our closest marshaling site. You swap the old vehicle out with a new one. If you participate in our LE upfit program, your vehicle will be ready with the additional equipment you need. It's a turnkey offering so that you have that vehicle. The fully burdened cost is represented just by our lease rate. And economies of scale allow us to provide these services that could be cost prohibitive if you're doing it as just one single entity. We allow for oversight without dictating operating parameters, so you do retain control of the vehicle. And our goal is really to provide you tools you need to manage your fleet within your agency's specific guidance. Um, I can't continue to tout the fleet service representatives enough, but I think they are the benefit of leasing. They are the main benefit. They're assigned by vehicle and they allow you to focus more time and resources on your mission. They're your one stop shop. They're only assigned a few hundred vehicles. And so I say only, I know it's a lot of work for them, but they are there for you. making sure they understand what your guidance is. They're there to make sure that you're doing everything you need to do, that you know how to use gsafleet.gov. They help with everything you see on the bottom here. This is our current geographic coverage of GSA Fleet. We have over 4,300 unique CONUS locations, and then 11,300 CONUS vehicle locations. You see on the bottom that our operations extend beyond to Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, Japan. We also have operations in Singapore. I'm sure Gary on this call could tell you every other location. But if you have vehicles in some locations you're not sure about, just let us know. We can let you know if we can support you. These are our sales and marshaling locations. We recently awarded a new contract in the last year. They're matched against agency-owned vehicle locations. So as you can see, we do have a very good deal of locations. We can transport these for you at a cost to these locations, but we have so many of them. So hopefully that helps when you're going to pick up a new vehicle or drop off a vehicle that's going to sale. Here's our rate breakdown. I am going to ask John to start stepping in because I think my voice is getting worse. This is probably a perfect slide. John has a background in business management, all things financials for GSA Fleet. So, John, if you don't mind taking this one.
Thanks, Steph. I appreciate it. You did as best you could. It sounded good for as long as you could.
Thank
So
you.
really good job. No, thanks. Yeah, so I'm John DePassable. Like Steph said, I've been doing consolidations for quite some time. I've been working in this world for more than a decade at this point. I helped agencies transfer probably close to 20,000 vehicles at this point. Some other folks on the phone have helped me along the way, not just me, but a lot of folks in the program, and of course all of our FSRs. So but as Steph said, I also worked previous to that. I currently work as our acquisition branch chief, consolidations branch chief. But prior to that, I worked on our business management group, kind of setting rates, looking at our all things financial. So when you look at rates, it's one of the big questions. There was already a question in the chat about it. So GSA Fleet, it's an unappropriated program. So we're not getting funding from Congress. We are recouping our costs through our lease rates. So our goal is to drive those rates as low as possible. And it's kind of a two-prong approach. So we have a monthly fixed cost, and that's basically the cost of the vehicle, the static cost, amortized over the life of the vehicle, as well as the overhead for us on the GSA side. And then the variable cost, it's the mileage rate. So that's your fuel and maintenance. So that fixed cost is going to stay the same month over month. And then depending on how much you drive, if you drive a lot, we have to recoup that because you're burning a lot of fuel and we're paying for fuel and maintenance because that's miles driven. If you don't drive a lot, if the vehicle's not sitting, your fixed costs still stay the same, but the variable cost would drop down accordingly. So each month we gather the number of miles driven through telematics, and then we bill you at the end of that month. So we're looking back 1 month, seeing how much you drove, and we're charging you for it. So, and included in all that overhead is all of us. So we are fully burdened. So everything that we do on our side is included in our rates. All of our employees, technology, all of that is built in on our side. So we're constantly striving to keep rates as low as possible. I know there was a question about recent rate increases. I won't shy away from it. They have been relatively high the last couple of years. The big thing to keep in mind, this is mostly driven through the increased costs of vehicles. So vehicles have gone up, I want to say something like 70% overall on average. So, depending on the type of vehicle, but in the last 4 or 5 years, it's like a 70% increase in acquisition costs. So it gets very difficult when you're looking at the cost of the vehicle 5, 6 years ago. If you haven't experienced the new costs yet in buying new vehicles, they've gone up precipitously. It has been a huge increase the last couple of years. You've probably seen it if anyone's done any shopping personally for vehicles. And along with that, everything else that goes along with vehicle operations has also increased up in cost. So maintenance and repair is more expensive than it was, all the parts obviously going up. So that's where it's being driven. We, again, are trying to do our best to keep everything as low cost as possible. We're setting our rates to be break even or as close to it as we possibly can. But the just math behind it is the increased cost of the vehicles has gone up substantially. So you'll see that borne out, whether you lease or purchase, the cost of the vehicles is quite a bit more expensive. So whenever you can, take a look in gsafleet.gov. You can see current costs. Like Steph said, we're buying vehicles from the same contracts. So the cost you're seeing in gsafleet.gov is the cost for the vehicles. And if you have some historical acquisition costs for your vehicles, you can kind of compare like to like and see how much it has increased over the last couple of years. Again, we work every year. Our contracting team does their very best to negotiate with our um, industry partners to get the best pricing possible. But keep in mind, it's auto manufacturers. There's not that many of them out there, so it's a limited pool, and we're aggregating as much demand as we can to try to drive down those prices. They're doing as best they can, but just overall, the industry has moved quite a bit in the last couple of years. So this is just a high level how we break it down. But effectively, you got your monthly rate for the vehicle. Your mileage rate covers the use of that vehicle. And you can drive as much or as little as you want. So some folks always ask about that. We don't have any minimums or maximums. We have agencies who drive very little because their mission dictates they stay relatively static. We have agencies who drive a lot, thousands of miles a month, and either one is fine. We adjust on the backside how long we keep the vehicles in accordance with that. So next slide, Stacy. I think one more. I think there's another graphic on this one. There you go. So just some numbers, kind of high level. We effectively we're leasing to everybody. So all the agencies who operate vehicles, they're leasing. So if you've got vehicles, it's likely you're leasing and owning some of them. We're doing our best. We're ticking off customers one by one to bring them all over to fully leasing, and get out of any commercial leases or agency owned vehicles. But just kind of full coverage across the spectrum here. And again, like Steph said, we got 11,000 locations for vehicles. In the last 5 years, we've done over 11,000 consolidations. So very significant. We've been working with our customers to bring them in. And again, it's just the decreased workload on your side, taking advantage of the efficiencies, things like your credit card program or plates, tags, things like that. All of that's handled on our side. That's part of our first full service lease. So we want you to be focusing on what your core competency is, what your core mission is. We've got several hundred folks in our program. Our full-time job, we wake up every day and we do vehicles. That's what we do. So that's where we excel. You guys are all fleet personnel in the broader sense. Your agency has a mission that goes beyond that. So we want you focusing on that mission and using using vehicles as a tool to get to your, true core competency of what you're trying to do as an agency. And if you look overall, the total number of vehicles in the federal fleet, it's kind of a pie depending on how you splice it up. There's about 600,000 vehicles. 200,000 are postal service. So if you pull those guys out, you got 400,000, and GSA Fleet is a little over half of that. So we're 235,000 of the 400 non-postal service. And then the other one, telematics, we mentioned we've been transitioning to ensure all of our vehicles have telematics. The big thing here is it allows us, because we are the owners of the asset, we are trying to protect the asset in the vehicle. It allows us to get mileage recording easily and cleanly to ensure there's no human error on that. Again, we bill based on that, and anything like engine codes, things like that. So there's a whole suite of things that agencies can use that for if you so choose, but that's all agency side. We don't have access to that information. But you could track vehicles if they're stolen, things like that. That's available through telematics. And just knowing that data is a way for you to increase best practices, efficiency. Telematics is the key for all that. So we're installing it across the board. We've been doing it through attrition over the last couple of years, and we're at 64% of our fleet. So we've made great strides. Why consolidate? There's just, the cost savings is huge. So if you're in commercial leases, there's just really no way around it. GSA Fleet is going to be substantially cheaper than any commercial leases. And even on the agency owned side, this is self-reported. So this is the data provided by your agency. We come out to be roughly 20% more cost effective than agency owned costs. So it's not right for every single instance, and not every vehicle can be consolidated. So not every vehicle should be, but by and large, if you look at kind of the broader level, we work out to be significantly cheaper, and we support a wide range of missions. So we'll touch on that a little bit more, but more or less, we're operating much younger fleet. So we're half the age roughly of what you're accustomed to on the agency side. And then utilization. So GSA Fleet vehicles drive a lot more than agency owned. Again, self-reported data that we're tapping into here just bears out in what we're seeing. These vehicles are being used at a higher clip than what you're seeing on the agency owned side. So just higher utilization, more efficiency overall. Next slide. So this is a big one. What changes and what doesn't? So our goal is to not have a ton change day to day. So we want you are dictating the appropriate use of vehicles for your agency. So that will always be the case. But we are dictating the appropriate use of our vehicle. So in terms of keeping it, maintained, things like that. So when you're taking the vehicle to a shop, we have involvement through our maintenance and control center to ensure that the appropriate maintenance is being done on the vehicle, but we're not dictating what's being done. Things like home to work authorization, any of that day-to-day activity, what the vehicle should be used for is still agency purview. So we're not changing any of the mission or operational requirements that you have. We're just trying to take on some of the administrative work. So we handle the administrative side again, so you guys can focus on the other side, what you're looking at as far as your actual mission. Things like accident management, we have a team who's looking into that. They're negotiating with body shops to ensure things are being done without being upsold or oversold on those services. We've got train techs. So these most of these guys are ex-mechanics who are working in this capacity, ensuring that brake jobs are being done at the appropriate intervals, things like that. So we are working to negotiate for the asset because, again, it's GSA Fleet's vehicle, and we're ensuring that the right amount of maintenance is being done while your folks, the drivers, can focus on what they're supposed to be doing for their core competency mission. And then just bringing everything into one place. So having all of your data in one spot just makes it a lot more efficient. There's a lot of reporting, things like that, that can be gained. Efficiencies can be gained by having it in one place. But again, day-to-day oversight, there's still fleet managers, agency headquarter fleet managers on your end who's making decisions on appropriate types of vehicles, mix of vehicles, number of vehicles. All of that is still on the agency side. We're not dictating that. We're just helping you to get to those numbers. So using our tools that we have to ensure you have the right number of vehicles, the right size of vehicles, things like that. And it's all done with your communication and coordination up and down through the approval processes that we have in place. Next slide. I think you got to hit a couple. We got some, you can just go through them all, bring them all up, Stacy. So these are just common misconceptions. And again, I'll leave a lot of time on the backside because I think there's a lot of value in the questions that get brought up. But some things that we hear constantly, that reasons why you can't lease vehicles. So GSA only does admin vehicles. It's really just not the case. I mean, we're predominantly not admin vehicles. Quite frankly, we're mostly a truck fleet. So we are a work fleet by and large. There's some things we can't handle. That is true. But by and large, it's not just admin vehicles. We do a wide range of offerings, and pickup trucks are our number one vehicle across the board, followed by minivans, which a lot of utility there. But then broader speaking, it's a lot of work trucks. That's primarily what we're looking at. Severe use is another one. If you use your vehicles in locations that are difficult terrain, things like that. We have a lot of agencies who do that. So there are increased costs as far as wear and tear associated with those vehicles. That is in our lease rates. So if you are using more than just standard wear and tear, there are additional costs for that. But those costs are similar whether you're leasing or owning a vehicle. If you're going to go through a set of tires every 10,000 miles, whether you own the vehicle or lease the vehicle, you're going to have to replace those tires. And it's a function of your mission. So if you're in unpaved areas, unimproved roads where you're hitting excessive number of potholes, roots, things like that, where you're going through tires, yet you're going to spend more on tires. That can be accomplished through leasing or owning. So there's no real difference in how that bears out. Just we're able to help you through the process of replacing those tires or whatever the wear out item might be. So we have a lot of agencies who are currently using us in those types of areas. The biggest one, if I consolidate, you'll be paying for your old vehicle. We do start lease rates immediately. So you will be paying a lease rate on your vehicle immediately upon consolidation. So two things to keep in mind. As I explained on the front side or a few slides ago, the variable rate, that's your mileage rate, that's covering fuel and maintenance. So those are costs that are going to be absorbed by your agency regardless. So you've still got to fuel the vehicle and maintain the vehicle. We're taking that cost on now. So we're, effectively recouping that through the mileage rate. And then the monthly rate is paying for the next vehicle. So where you would likely have an outlay of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a new vehicle, we absorb that cost to replace the vehicle. This is offsetting a little bit of that. So in the the small amount of time where you're paying a lease rate on the current vehicle, we're actually using that to offset the cost of the new vehicle. And it's predicated on perpetual use. So we're, the leasing model we have set up is from this point forward, you'll be continually, in the leasing program. So we're always using our capital and replenishing it to acquire the next vehicle in the life cycle. So you will be paying obviously upon transition, but that is used to replace in the future and for the current operation of your vehicle. Another one, a big topic of conversation is replacing vehicles and the time frame. So we actually have a whole group. I worked in it for a number of years in our business management group who evaluates this. So there is kind of an ideal spot on when you can dispose of a vehicle, and it maximizes the resale value of the vehicle, reduces the cost of the vehicle on the front side, so the operational cost. So they're trying to thread that needle to maximize how much proceeds they can get while minimizing the front side incurred costs, so downtime, inefficiencies there. And so they work on that. They hone it in. They look at it by type of vehicle every year. So there's tons of analysis that goes into it. And they're, massaging it every year to make sure we're staying in line. But by and large, what we're trying to do is thread that needle to keep it down. Some agencies have taken a look and said, if we run this vehicle for 20 years, it's lower cost. It may appear lower cost, but you have to take into account the other costs associated with that. So higher maintenance and repair, and most importantly, the downtime associated with that. So a lot of instances where you've got two vehicles on the road because one of them's down all the time. So you're effectively at half use, right? So utilization is a factor in that, and that's all taken into account when they're setting those replacement criteria. And again, that oversight we kind of talked about, that's just not the case. You guys maintain that. We're just helping you through that process. And then just purchasing vehicles faster on your side. Generally, just I haven't seen that. We would, I have worked with a lot of customers who've just had so much difficulty getting vehicles repaired in the short term because of the hurdles that are on the agency side in some instances to get that done. Whereas we have all the appropriate personnel and processes in place to ensure we're using our existing contracts to take advantage of that. So by and large, we're just able to do things. Again, we're doing anything you're doing at a smaller scale. We're doing it over 200,000 vehicles. So we're able to dedicate more resources to it as a function of the number of vehicles we have. This one is a big one. So anyone who's looking at commercial leasing, I think another one, this one might have yeah, sorry, Stacy. It's just significantly more expensive. So the biggest thing is commercial leasing is built for the private sector. So effectively what we're doing on the leasing, on the GSA Fleet leasing side, is we have predicated everything we do and tailored it to the federal marketplace. So we are taking everything and making it and distilling it down to this specific need. We're on the private side and the commercial leasing side. They're looking at the private market. So it's quite a bit different. They're not looking at everything we are. And as a result, we're able to ensure that we're meeting all the mandates and getting everything you need. And it's significantly less expensive. I've done the analysis. I've worked with many agencies, and the 30% I would say is an even really low understatement. I've seen us be half the cost or even more advantageous towards GSA Fleet leasing. So I encourage you, if anyone has commercial leases, please reach out. We can help transition you from commercial leases. Again, this is just as a taxpayer, this is good for government overall. It's significantly better from a cost competitive standpoint. So go to the next one. These are some consolidations that we've had recently. Like I said, I've been overseeing these for quite some time, but all the work is actually done at the local level through our FSRs. So we've been working on expanding OCONUS operations. There were a couple questions there about where we can handle that. So we've recently moved into Japan and consolidated several hundred vehicles over there. We're working with Navy to expand that out. We've got a couple other agencies in that area. And a couple big wins for us. We moved Social Security Administration over to 100% leasing. So again, any agencies that are operating just a handful of vehicles, that really just doesn't make a lot of sense administratively to continue to pour resources into that. So we're working with them. And another one, DOE. I actually took that picture on the bottom right, DOE of getting some of their last couple vehicles over to be 100% GSA Fleet leasing. So big wins for us And we continue to work across our agency spectrum with customers to consolidate vehicles. VA, this VA's been a fantastic partner for us over the last couple of years. So they've been great to work with. Been helping them transition their vehicles in large by and large over to GSA Fleet Leasing. It's been kind of site by site, so it's been a long process, but we've been working with them. This is a vehicle we did recently. So this is a 40-year-old truck. So not a lot of life left on this thing, as you can see by the seat in there, but this is something that we were able to bring into the fleet, get rid of, and ensure they're not operating something that's just way out of date. This is where we get into safety concerns, things like that. We want our agencies to operate the safest, most efficient fleet possible. Obviously, when you're operating something 40 years old, there's significant safety concerns. Things have just advanced so much. So it needed it. And this was a way for them to get into the leasing program, get that vehicle replaced, and of course, reduce maintenance, repair, all that in the process. So law enforcement, this is a big one. I get a ton of questions. As I mentioned up front, I've been wearing two hats for quite some time. So I also oversee our acquisition team. I'm lucky enough to oversee that group, and part of that is law enforcement. So I have a group of guys on my side on that team who are dedicated to LE vehicles. We do a lot of law enforcement vehicles, and this is something that we've been working with agencies for the last 10 years on to try to bring this in and get standardization. The big thing is, again, economies of scale. We want to be standardizing law enforcement packages as much as we can across the board. And this gets us to a solution where we're relatively turnkey solution on law enforcement upfit vehicles. So we don't do communication. So radios are something you have to do on the agency side, but lights, sirens, all the hookups, radio hookups are there so that you can kind of drop in a radio and be on your way. Graphics can be included depending on the agency. But having standardized packages allows us to kind of roll that demand up and go out for solicitation. If we're trying to onesie twosie, there's just no real appetite from the manufacturers to bid on that, to play ball with us. So we've been able to aggregate that demand and boil that down to a few different packages that we go out, and you can order these as turnkey. So these are coming from the manufacturer with all the equipment installed. It includes the 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty on all the equipment. So your light bar on the top of your roof would be, in this case, this is a Dodge. You'd have your Dodge SKU. If that were to have any issues, you could go to a Dodge dealer and they'd be able to replace that light bar for you under warranty. So things like that. We just had a huge reduction in the number of vehicles on the road kind of overlapping so that you don't have two on the road while you're upfitting your new vehicle. This keeps, again, it's all about the administration burden. So getting we're essentially just swapping keys and radios versus doing the full upfit when the vehicle comes in. And again, a significant reduction in the cost because we're buying at scale now. We're going out in contract and purchasing and kind of leveraging all of that together. Some verbatim, just kind of toot our own horn a little bit, but some agencies we've been working very closely with. I'll let you guys read it, but we have been very fortunate to have some very strong partners over the last couple of years. Like I said, we pushed operations over Oconus. We've expanded quite a bit, and it's been significant with Department of Navy. So Liz Walter has been a huge advocate of the leasing program. She's been great to work with. So you can see here, she's been very pleased with the progress we've made. There's more to do over there. But she's been very happy thus far. So we like to see that. So you can see it's not just us saying we're great. There's some agencies out there who are, concurring with what we're saying. Next one, Stacy. Yeah. So how it works. Kind of high level. Again, Steph hit on a lot of this, but we work with you. So we don't know until we start digging into this. We have folks that work with me directly to kind of determine what we can and can't support. We have our FSRs, our FMCs are all involved in the process to make sure that what we can do and what your mission is can be supported. So that initial conversation is just to try to determine what your vehicles are, what your mission is, how GSA Fleet can or can't support it. And then we work with you to kind of review what exactly your vehicle list is, how it could work. And then once we come to agreement, we work on a rate quote to ensure you understand what the cost would be and an agreement on the cycle at which the vehicles would be replaced. If everyone's in agreement, we sign an MOA and start transitioning those vehicles over, and then immediately begin with our operational support. And then we start replacing those vehicles on the backside to get you into newer vehicles as quickly as possible. So we want to make sure you guys have zero downtime. Again, it's effectively just swapping plates. I participated in quite a number of these over the years. It literally is drive in with your old plates, we take them off, put new ones on, drive out with new plates and a fuel card, and then we start the process on the backside, full support of those vehicles, and then replacements. So this is, again, there's no commitment here. We encourage all of our FSRs to talk to their customers on a regular basis to always discuss consolidation. It's actually something it's a very big priority for our current administrator and the administration overall using shared services. So it's something we're all tasked with in talking with our customers regularly, and they can work with you to determine what the cost would be and how they can benefit you in transitioning those vehicles over. Again, it's not, a sales pitch, nothing like that, but just exploring what we can do for you if it makes sense, where it would make sense, if it's, these partial bits of your fleet or the whole thing. Again, we want to work with you to make sure we're doing it as advantageously as possible for mutually exclusive or mutually beneficial, sorry, for both agency and GSA Fleet. And then if all works well, we actually get folks, we sign off on the agreement, and then we get folks out and swap those plates. We make sure everyone understands the parameters for operating vehicles using our fleet card for fuel, maintenance, all that, to ensure we're getting the full benefit of the administrative side of things. And then we can do telematics as well. If you're bringing in older vehicles into the fleet, we can install telematics to ensure that all the data collection is there. We're getting accurate mileage readings, things like that, and then get all the data in one spot on your side. So this is a consolidation that was scheduled. Just one of our FSRs out there actually swapping the plates where the rubber meets the road, kind of thing. And then post consolidation, you're just one of our vehicles really at that point. So you're treated just like everything else. You get the full service that's provided to us. Again, we'd put telematics in the vehicles where we can, and then we'll issue a WEX card for fueling and maintenance. And all the expenses would go on that card, and you get fraud protection, all that through our loss prevention team to ensure that those vehicles are being fueled appropriately and maintained appropriately through our MCC, all that. So all the customer service that's afforded to our vehicles is immediately afforded to those vehicles upon consolidation. So best practices, early engagement. So again, we don't know exactly what you have as far as vehicles. This is where we rely on those local conversations to work with our FSRs, with anyone you've got. So let us know how we can potentially help out. And then engaging leadership. So making sure everyone all across the board on your end is up to speed and understands what your goals are, what you want to be doing. We won't move ahead with any consolidation without an MOA on file. So that's a prerequisite to have a consolidation. And then on the backside, we'll get all the data and everything cleaned up and make sure we're all working together. And then some resources. We've got a ton of resources out there, so you can look through all this in gsafleet.gov in the glove box. So, and I think in the next couple slides, we've got just the contact information, all that. So you're always welcome to reach out. It's a shared mailbox that we can hit anything with. So anything you've got, you can shoot it there, or you can directly to me. We've all got access to that, and we can work with you to see what makes sense, looking at rate quotes, things like that. But again, I just want to leave some time on the backside for questions if they've come in. I know I'm guessing some folks have been chatting into the Q&A box in the chat throughout. But if there's anything that we can address while we're here, happy to do it. If you've got questions, you can chat them in now, and we can kind of try to address them verbally here while we're all on the phone, make sure we're, hitting all that. But again, we want to be, able to work with you, get the information to us. We can work with you to see what makes sense, make sure everyone's on the same page, and then complete the consolidation there locally with your folks who are operating the vehicles. All right. Is there anything in the Q&A?
Hey, yeah, I like this question. Does the agency sign a contract with you? If so, how long is the contract for, and can it be broken if it's not working out?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. So no, so GSA Fleet is our operating parameters are based on statutory authority. So we don't have any overarching MOAs on how we operate the vehicles going forward. What we do have is a customer leasing guide. So all of our vehicles adhere to that. The MOA just covers the intragovernmental asset transfer. So it gets down into the weeds kind of from an accounting perspective, but it's a non-cash transfer, intragovernmental asset transfer from your agency to ours to transition that vehicle from your ownership to us. That allows us to operate it and then sell the vehicle off. So we have the MOA just to ensure that everyone's up to speed on that. I'll be honest, basically the MOA says that upon transition, it'll operate just like any other vehicle, and everything is predicated on our customer leasing guide. So there's no 3-year, 36,000 mile minimum, maximum miles, nothing like that. You drive as much or as little as needed by your mission. And then we replace those vehicles based on our standards. So generally, sedans like 5 years, 50, 60,000 miles. Trucks are a little bit longer, a little higher miles. Diesels go a little longer than that. But we're managing all that on the backside. So if you give me a 10-year-old truck, it's probably going to be ready to be replaced right away. We would get that in, get an order in for it, and get it out, because it's advantageous to us since we're paying fuel and maintenance to get those vehicles. 10-year-old vehicles, much less fuel efficient. All that savings is brought into the government when we get those older vehicles that out their maintenance hogs, their gas hogs. So getting them out of the fleet as quickly as possible is beneficial for everyone.
Hey, John.
Yep.
Oh, I was going to say, there's another good question I wanted. Were you done with that answer? I thought.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question about vehicles in remote areas in Alaska or anywhere else, I guess, where they said where there is not a GSA maintenance presence. Can we use local vendors there? So maybe you could talk about our flexibility in some situations and
Yep.
how we do rely on local vendors, but our flexibility.
Yeah, so local vendors are definitely our default. Generally speaking, if we don't have vendors there, there's a high likelihood that we don't have vehicles in that location. But if we did have vehicles, we could work to set up vendors. So it depends, kind of is where I'm going with this. But super remote locations like Alaska, we do have operations. If you're in an area, we can work with vendors to either get them set up to be able to accept GSA Fleet lease in the WEX card, and ensure they're adhering to all of our standards. If not, there is the opportunity, if you're in a super remote location, we can kind of structure things. There are options. We can look at different types of setups, but there's the potential for a rate that wouldn't include maintenance if you are able to take the maintenance on yourself and have a way to maintain those vehicles. It all kind of depends, but there's ways around it, cross service agreements that can be utilized in really rare circumstances. By and large, we found that the most appropriate way and most cost beneficial way to do it is relying on the local economy. And generally what we're seeing is we can find some service in those areas. WEX is just kind of what we have through our WEX program, from fueling and maintenance, covers basically everywhere we need to. And then in those one-off instances, we can work to get those other vendors set up, but we can again work with you to determine what's necessary. I wouldn't just use it as a reason not to consolidate or explore consolidation on the front side. We can always look into some options to see what's most appropriate. And we do have some vehicles that are operating in such a remote area or such a unique instance where we would, have them on a rate that wouldn't include mileage. And again, we wouldn't charge for that if we're not, if we don't need to recoup for it. So we'll work with you on that. But again, the default model is full service. That's where the most cost advantages or cost advantages are for the customer side. There's one on diplomatic plates. Same type of plate level. We could talk about that. We have to probably, it's Lorena. We might have to talk about that a little offline. I know you can't, we offer GSA tags for everything, obviously. But you can use state plates if necessary. Diplomatic plates might be their own little subset that would have to be administered through the State Department, I would assume. We'd have to work with you on that. I don't think there would be anything that would preclude us from it, but we'd have to kind of go into the ins and outs of exactly how the vehicles are being used to ensure everything is in accordance with our policy and yours as the agency side. But certainly reach out, and it's something we can happily explore and see. Again, it depends on where they're operating and what the jurisdictions are. Sell your older vehicles to ourselves, Vivian. I'm trying to understand. So you'd have to have exchange sale authority to bring in the proceeds on those vehicles. I don't know that that would work from an accounting perspective. I don't know the mechanisms that you'd be able to do that. But it's certainly something we can. I'm happy to explore with you and see what your situation is. If you want to send that in, we can kind of work through that. By and large, I mean, we would sell off the vehicle at the end of life. I don't know the advantage, the mechanism that you're trying to explore with selling it to yourself. It'd be fully expensed at that point. If again, it gets down to the accounting side of it. So we'd have to kind of talk through that a little bit. Ooh, this is a good one. Tim Schiller's asked about budgetary impacts. So this is one of the benefits that sorry, Susan, I didn't see the full context here, so I didn't skip over. I just think I might have missed something along there. But Tim, uh there is no contract. So effectively we work with agencies. If you are able to or if you determine that vehicles are no longer needed and you're turning vehicles in a small quantity, you can actually work with your FSR and turn vehicles in. There's no contract. So if you determine if your mission changes and you had 10 vehicles at a location and going forward you only expect to need 9, you would actually select a vehicle in that replacement cycle that year as do not replace, as turn in. So in our system you'd be able to select a vehicle, say you no longer need it, you would turn that vehicle in, and we would bring it in, and that would be the end of it. So you turn in your keys and be done. If the vehicle has life left, we would assign it to a new customer who's looking to increase. If not, we would sell the vehicle off, and that would be the end. There's no penalty. Again, it's kind of a fee for use. So we're charging for the cost of the vehicle to use it while you're using it, but there's no contract long term. If there's some huge major change in vehicle needs, we would ask you to work with our headquarters program to ensure it's being done in the most appropriate way. But onesie, twosie vehicles can be turned in as necessary at the local level through your FSR. So LEs, this is a good one. Gary's typing, but I'll hit it too. You might answer better than me, Gary. So I don't know. No, we expect the vehicles to be turned in the condition they are delivered to you. Not in the condition, in the I shouldn't say condition because we're delivering brand new vehicles, but with all the equipment that was delivered at the beginning of the vehicle. So LE vehicles should be turned in with all the equipment that they were delivered to you. We take those vehicles in, we try to sell them to state and locals. If we're unable to sell them to a state and local for some reason, then it would be on us to decontent the vehicle and sell the vehicle off. There's obviously regulations on how they need to be disposed. So the best way and the way our costs are set up is so that we can recoup by selling through the state and locals. If that's not available, there's no charge for the agency. Now, if there's neglect or abuse to the vehicle, there's a charge for that, but not with regards to the LE content. You leave the content on that was delivered with the vehicle. A couple big things there, just a reminder. You take your radio out because that belongs to the agency, but more importantly, and you'd be shocked how many times this has happened, you take your guns out of the vehicle. So leave the weapon storage solution, but the actual weapons should be removed. Don't turn those in with the vehicle, but everything else, all the light sirens, gun storage, anything like that, weapon storage, yeah, along with the ammo, please take that as well. That should be kept, but everything else stays on the vehicle, and we would sell it off. Fire truck. We don't do fire trucks. They are just far too complex. To be quite honest, every one of them's a unicorn, quite frankly. So it's one thing we don't do unless you got a lot of fire trucks that are all exactly the same. I might be able to pitch my leadership on it, but unfortunately, they're just so one-off that we can't. Our program is primarily predicated on some standardization, and there's just none. Even ambulances, we do ambulances, and that is a tall task in the world of standardization, but we work with our customer agencies to ensure we're getting like packages and things like that, so that in the event someone has an ambulance and no longer needs it, it can be turned in and rehomed with another agency. EVs, yeah. So there's been a lot of changes with regards to acquisition policy. Steph, I'll do my best on this one, but you might want to chime in as well. Just acquisition focus is moved away from EVs in the short term. So we currently are not procuring true dedicated electric vehicles. Hybrids and E85 are still available to meet any EPACT or any other regulations as necessary. But yeah, with the rescission of that executive order, the focus on procuring those EVs has been kind of shifted away in the short term. So we are, we're doing our best to ensure we're meeting mandates, administrative priorities across the board. Every year changes with what we're trying to do. We just want to be sure we're meeting as best we can with the current alignment with the administration. And that's the one benefit. We've got folks across the organization who help to ensure that we're doing as best we can. We have folks dedicated specifically on these things. I didn't talk about it. Steph mentioned a little bit on the front side, but when you look at things like acquisition, I'll talk about it a little bit because it's my world. We have folks who are dedicated to that. So I have someone on my team who is dedicated to buses. I have a law enforcement team dedicated to that. We have folks who are dedicated to alternative fuel vehicles so that we're looking at what's most appropriate for E85, things like that, to ensure, again, we're meeting the mandates, we're meeting administrative policies or administration policies and procedures each year. So we're able to adjust year in and year out to make sure we're hitting that as best we possibly can. I think we got most of them. A couple questions about remote locations. Again, yeah, any questions you have, I put that email in there, the GSA Fleet consolidation one. So myself and a number of folks on this call have access to that. So anything you have, you can always reach out to myself or Steph directly too. We'd be happy to help and get things started. I will tell you, not every vehicle is a candidate, not every mission is, but by and large, we've found that more often than not, GSA Fleet can support it. It's just a matter of working with you, ensuring that everyone's up to speed on what's going to happen and how it happens and how it works and what we can offer you as far as reducing your administrative burden and ensuring you've got the vehicles to meet your mission. Our goal is to have high utilization, number of vehicles on the road as high as possible, being used to the maximum extent possible, because that drives down costs, keeps everything as cost competitive as possible. We might have gone over right about time, Stacy. There's one more chat. I mean, if you're looking at a F550, that's something we already have on contract. Depending on what you're doing to it after, it's potentially something we could do through AREC. That's something that's not awarded as a standard option, but can be purchased through the OEM manufacturers as an additional requirement. So if you can get those requirements cleaned up and get it over to us, we can have our engineering team look at it and see what, if anything currently is available, or if there's anything that could be made available to meet that mission. I'm not familiar enough with what equipment you have on those things. F550 doesn't make me too nervous. We got a lot of vocational things that we're using, cab chassis type to build off of. And depending on the mission, there's a lot of options that we can, are afforded to us to make that happen. So it's certainly a possibility, but we'd have to see exactly what you're doing and see if it would make sense for both you as a leasing customer and us as a leasing program. Yeah, so disposal's all on us. So any vehicles you bring into the leasing program, we are on the hook for disposal. So we bring those vehicles in, dispose them for you. So anything that gets transitioned, disposal is our responsibility at that point. And that's actually one of the benefits, because I know disposal is you think it'd be easier than it is. It's unfortunately not. But we have folks that's their job. They do vehicle disposal all day, every day. So you're essentially just adding to our workload of what we do all the time versus something that you do on a semi irregular basis. So that's one of the benefits when we talk full life cycle of vehicles. Disposal is part of it, and we're able to help you out with that. That's everything in there, Stacy. I'm happy to hang on for a minute or two if anyone has anything else. But that's all that's in there at the moment.
Well, thanks, John. Thanks, Steph. We hope you feel better real soon. Thanks to the folks that were answering questions in the background. Y'all were keeping up with things at a pretty good pace. And another question came in while I talked.
Yeah, I'll hit that one real quick because that's a great
Yeah.
one. Tasha, there is no set limit. So we actually set maximums. We won't keep your vehicle longer than a certain period of time. We establish that on the front side. So when we look at the vehicles that you have, we would work with you on a cadence. If you have one vehicle at a location, if you're, mostly GSA Fleet lease, but you have one agency owned vehicle and it's 15 years old, we're going to replace that thing right away. As soon as we get it in our system, we'll get it in for replacement. If you've got a mix of vehicles and some are 2 or 3 years old, those vehicles we would run those for a couple years, just because they're too early, to replace. But we would work with you to ensure that everyone's on the same page as far as the replacement criteria status for each vehicle. So we set kind of those thresholds based on the number of the vehicles you have at that specific spot, and that's all built into the MOA. So in the MOA, it'll say we'll replace. For instance, say we're going to consolidate 10 vehicles and we'll replace them over the next X number of fiscal years. And then we'll work with you at the local level to get those replaced over that set period of time. And we generally speaking, we try to do it as quickly as possible. Again, because agency owned vehicles tend to be quite a bit older. They're just more expensive to operate. Yep. Yeah. So as soon as you're brought into the fleet, as long as the vehicle's safe and operable when you bring it over, then it immediately gets all those maintenance, all the standard maintenance that our normal vehicles would get would be afforded to that consolidated vehicle. So brakes, tires, wipers, all that stuff is all included as standard. Again, if you're a neglect and abuse, not covered, but standard, vehicles. If you're running your brakes metal to metal and ripping up rotors, that's going to be an additional charge. But if it's just brake pads that need to be replaced, that's going to be included in the lease rates. So that, as soon as you consolidate the vehicle, all that burden shifts to us from a maintenance and repair standpoint. Yeah, that is not sorry. I apologize. I just dismissed someone's question. There's like a dash. I think Stacy has it in the chat for what the email. It's GSA Fleet dash consolidation at gsa.gov. Sorry, let's see if I can resurrect that. I think that's all we got, Stacy.
All right, we'll give this another whirl. Thanks everybody for attending. Hope you got some good information out of this to take back and share with your agencies. Again, reach out to the team if you have any follow-up questions. Most likely tomorrow, everybody that attended will get an email with, again, a copy of the slides, a certificate for you to fill out if you need it. And there will also be a link to where the recording will be posted. Give us at least a couple weeks on that. We've got to work some things through our Office of Communications in order to get it posted. So somewhat depends on their workload and what all they have going on when we reach out to them. With that, thank you all. Have a great day. Take care.